welcome and welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Going to talk some Scottie Pippen has officially lost his mind. But before we get to that, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. And if you want the audio only version of the podcast, so you can just hear my voice but not look at my face, I get it. And you can just open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, please make sure you give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And keep in mind, we'll be back to do another live show Saturday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So look forward to that. All right, Scottie Pippen. So, man, I don't even know where to start with this, but I'll try. So the last couple of years, pretty much since the Last Dance documentary came out during COVID, Scottie Pippen has seemingly been on a rampage, and his goal seems, I guess he didn't like the portrayal of himself and maybe some of his Chicago Bulls teammates in the Last Dance, and so he has seemingly been on a rampage, and his goal was nothing more than to tear down and destroy the legacy of Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the guy who is widely regarded as the greatest basketball player who ever lived. And not only, I suppose, to tear down Michael Jordan, but to uplift himself and how people perceive him as a player in the attempt. And so you listen to some of the things he said, and it's been downright crazy, and none of it seems to match up with, you know, the other things that he said during the years. But then again, I mean, I guess we have no idea where Scottie's coming from. But let's start off a little bit with some history. Scottie Pippen, I like to say, is the greatest Robin in the history of the NBA. If you want to call Michael Jordan Batman, then Scottie Pippen is the greatest Robin. He's the greatest number two, and he seems to be very, very offended by people perceiving him that way. The LeBron fans seem to love to push the false narrative that he carried Michael Jordan. Absolutely untrue. Now, they will say, and this is true, lacking context, but it is true that Michael Jordan never won anything without Scottie Pippen, i.e. never won a playoff series. And I think his overall playoff record was 1-9 without Scottie Pippen, i.e. he won one game and lost 9 in the playoffs prior to Scottie Pippen arriving. But if you go back and look at what Scottie Pippen was in his first couple of years, it's not like he was some supreme difference maker, like he came in and all of a sudden everything shifted and everything changed and Michael Jordan was suddenly able to win now, because that's just not how it was. As I often say, Michael Jordan kind of forged that iron, right? Iron sharpens iron. Don't get me wrong. Scottie Pippen is one of the easily 50 greatest players of all time, but iron sharpens iron, and Michael Jordan was able to forge that into the weapon that Scottie Pippen became. Now, this is so interesting because, again, we know how great Scottie Pippen was, and if you look right there on the screen, you can see some of the highlights. I mean, the guy was a tremendous passer, even though he didn't have great assist numbers, because, again, no one averages great assist numbers in the triangle. But running that point forward position, initiating offense, just really good court vision, outstanding defender. And let me stop you there, too, because, you know, again, the LeBron people will push this narrative that all Michael Jordan had to do was score. Absolute lie. Because if you look at it through most of their playoff series, Michael Jordan actually did defend the best offensive player from the opposing team more often than Scottie Pippen. Now, he doesn't get credit for that because he was such an elite scorer. But Michael Jordan, as we know, has been a defensive player of the year. Scottie Pippen's never been that. Michael Jordan, 9-time first team all defense. Scottie Pippen only 8. So, I mean, Michael Jordan, when he retired, he was number 1 all time in blocks among guards. Now he's number 2. D-Wade broke that. But the point I'm trying to make is Michael Jordan was an elite defender. Now, that doesn't take away anything from the fact that Scottie Pippen was an elite defender, one of the greatest man-on defenders of all time. No question about it. His size and his length allowed him to pretty much defend everything from the 1 to the 4. The 4 a little tougher because back then true power forwards could take you on the block and they were a lot more physical than they are now. I think Scottie Pippen would have a relatively easy time defending today's small forwards, but that's a different story because most of them don't go to the block. Although I would love to see a Scottie Pippen Kawhi Leonard matchup. That would be crazy. Anyway, Scottie Pippen, very good rebounder, passer, decent scorer. And where I push back on the narrative that he carried Jordan and this, that, and the third is very simple because he played with outstanding teams when Michael Jordan wasn't there and was never able to get over the hump and show that he could do it. So, pretty simple, right? Jordan never won without him, but it's disingenuous to say that and leave out the fact that Scottie Pippen never won without Michael Jordan either. But Scottie Pippen over the last few years has been saying some absolutely absurd things. Then he's been saying some things that make sense, I guess, depending on your perspective. But the weird part is that he's flip-flopping back and forth. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just take a little look at this montage of Scottie Pippen's flip-flop moments, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more.
The numbers don't lie. He's right there. He probably will never catch him in terms of MVP.
Okay.
But in terms of statistics, LeBron is right there. And when you look across the board, not just scoring, check his assists, check his rebounds, he's probably ahead of Jordan.
Michael Jordan is the greatest player to ever put on shoes and play in our game. No doubt about it. I'm always asked about questions to compare him to LeBron. I try to make the best of it.
You try to make the best of it?
I've tried to make the best of it, but really the comparison shouldn't ever be made. They both play two different positions. The way LeBron James play, Michael Jordan was never asked to play that way because I took that away from him. I was the point forward. I was the facilitator. Michael Jordan is a scorer. He was a defender. He played the game as complete as LeBron James did when he needed to, but he was asked to score the basketball, and that's what he was great at. And there's no game that I would ever play in and pick LeBron James over Michael Jordan.
I seen Michael Jordan play before I came to play with the Bulls. You guys seen him play. He was a horrible player. He was horrible to play with. He was all one-on-one. He's shooting bad shots, and all of a sudden, we become a team and we start winning. Everybody forgot who he was.
Was Michael the best or the greatest ever?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you look at the MVPs that he was able to achieve, but I think it was all brought from us being successful as a team. Obviously, someone is going to bring those accolades home, but yeah, he was the greatest player, definitely in basketball.
So where are we with this, Scottie? So the first part of the clip you heard, this was some years ago. This was on First Take when Max Kellerman was still on there with Stephen A. Smith. And Scottie says that because of LeBron's incredible statistics that he's ahead of Michael Jordan. Okay. What you didn't hear in that clip, because I cut it, was Stephen A. Smith going absolutely ballistic about those comments. But anyway, not the point. So the second part of the clip, then you hear him say that there's no situation in which he would ever take LeBron game. No game in which he would ever take LeBron James over Michael Jordan. Okay. Then there's the third clip. You hear him talking about Michael Jordan was a horrible player before he got there. What? And then the final clip, this is just from a couple days ago. He's on the Today Show Australia. Coincidentally, he was in Australia with Horace Grant and Luke Longley doing the No Bull tour. And he states that Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time when he's asked about it. So you're wondering, what is going on with you, Scottie? What are you talking about? Why are you so back and forth? What's happening here? And so we really don't know. I mean, it's just crazy because, like I said, the first part is he's not happy with how he was portrayed in The Last Dance. And so, quick side note, here's the weird thing. There's actually, I want to say during the 1994 and 95 seasons, when Scottie Pippen was undoubtedly the man, the leader of the Chicago Bulls, there's a clip. I don't know if I have it, but there's a clip where Scottie Pippen is on the bench and he's actually wearing Michael Jordan's sneakers, and he lifts up his foot to the camera, points to the sneakers, and then motions for Michael Jordan, like, come back. And there's another recent interview where he's saying that he really kind of enjoyed the time that Michael Jordan wasn't there because it allowed him for the first time to be the leader on those Bulls teams and really show what he could do and step out of Jordan's shadow, so that when Jordan came back, he was more as an equal than, a subordinate. And so it's like, okay, what are you really talking about? It's almost like how I talk about LeBron forgets that we got the stuff that he says and tweets on wax, and then he says something totally different, contradicting that. This is what Scottie Pippen is doing here. Like, we saw you when Michael Jordan was away telling Jordan to come back, and now it's, oh, you love that time that he wasn't there because it allowed you to be the man. Well, that's cool. You wanted to be the man, but you called him back. And so So we saw all of that. And then, of course, you hear all this stuff, and maybe a big part of that was he was trying to sell a book. I think a couple of years ago he had a book coming out, so he wants to sell a book. So he's saying all these incendiary things about Michael Jordan. So it's like, okay, are you just trying to sell the book? Do you really mean this stuff? Who knows? Then there's and I don't really like to get into this stuff because it's kind of gossipy or whatever, and I'm more about what goes on between the lines, and that's my differentiator on who's better and etc. Like, what can you do? So of course your accomplishments and your achievements, but what can you do between the lines are super huge for me. And so you had Scottie upset, because of all this going on. And then of course there was well, his ex-wife Larsa Pippen was dating Michael Jordan's son, which I'm sure was a super awkward situation. So then, he's got all this other stuff to say, and it was just crazy. It was just crazy. And then, of course, you hear the recent news that Larsa Pippen and Marcus Jordan decided to split. And then, oddly enough, I don't know if the timing is coincidental or not, but oddly enough, then you all of a sudden hear Scottie Pippen kind of easing back and making the statement on the Today Show Australia that, well, Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. Now, he didn't say that unprompted. He was asked the question about whether or not Michael is the greatest player of all time, and he said so. But that doesn't quite jive with, his recent comments that Michael Jordan was a horrible player before he got there. So it's like, Scottie, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Like, I just don't get why he can't be satisfied with the fact that even though he was a Robin, he was the greatest Robin ever. And he had one of the greatest careers ever. And, he actually spoke to that in this recent interview on the Today Show Australia, where he talked about that 10-year stretch in terms of winning 6 championships within a decade. And very, very few players can say they did that. And that's one of the greatest stretches in the history of NBA basketball. And, that second Jordan three-peat Bulls was arguably the greatest team ever, especially that 1996 team, the 72-10 team. Now, that record eventually got supplanted by the Warriors, who went 73-9. Of course, the Warriors lost in the finals to LeBron James and the Cavs. Let's not get me started talking about the stimulus package that the NBA delivered LeBron and the Cavs, but that's something different. But that 96 Bulls team is kind of pretty much regarded as the golden standard, the standard bearer of greatest all-time NBA teams. So you look at it and you say, man, Scottie, don't know what's going on with you, man. Don't know what's going on. It just seems like there's a whole bunch of different ulterior motives and different non-basketball related things driving his commentary. And again, it's very coincidental that Marcus Jordan and Larsa Pippen split, and then all of a sudden he has much better things to say about Michael Jordan as a basketball player. I find that very interesting. So what I want to know from you is, what do you think is going on with Scottie? I think he's gone nuts. What do you think is kind of responsible for all this flip-flopping back and forth in terms of his commentary on Michael Jordan? He was a horrible player. He's the greatest of all time. LeBron is ahead of him. No game he would choose LeBron over Michael Jordan. Leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you. Can't wait to get back with you next episode. And I'm out. Peace.